can lead in the world, but will only lead by engaging the world in how we can move forward. How we can move forward towards greater peace in Iraq, greater peace in the Middle East, democratization all over the world, human rights all over the world, getting rid of dictatorships and regimes all across the African continent, for example. Those are things with which we must engage our nation. And our nation is a great one that can do these things. But this administration has turned its back on the responsibility of our great nation. And everybody who watches on that beautiful day, January 20th, 2009, will know that this country is saying we are back in business in working with the world community to improve our condition, our human condition all over the world. No more famine, no more loose nukes, no more wars. Are those things going to happen immediately under President Obama? None of us believes that we can solve all the world's problems in a day. But we all know that if we take it one day at a time with those goals, with the engagement, then great things can happen. I think it's going to be a fundamentally different world, and everybody will know it from day one.
Hi. First, thanks for coming. I really enjoyed your talk. I'm sure we've all heard about in the news about Senator Clinton misremembering being under sniper fire when she went to Bosnia, and I'm sure your campaign really liked that. But the thing that I focus on is she was in Bosnia, and McCain was in Israel last week. A lot of people say when President Bush was elected, he didn't have a lot of foreign experience because he was just governor of Texas. What has Barack Obama been doing to get that international experience? Has he been going to other countries? Has he been engaging himself in these kind of things? Has he been engaging the world, to use our motto? I mean, it's great to have these ideas about improving the world, but what has he been doing to kind of gain that ability to do so?
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, where to start? He serves in the Foreign Relations Committee. So the question is, has he been around the world? Absolutely. In his job, you know, he actually has a job as a U.S. Senator, which he does, and he does it with great pride. So as a member of the Foreign Relations Committee, he is part of the integral oversight of our foreign policy and trying to shape the policy as we go forward. Obviously, there have been disagreements between one end of Capitol Hill and the other about the direction of our foreign policy. But as a member of the committee, he's been very active there. He has traveled, for example, he and Senator Lugar have been very active in trying to track down and secure loose nukes all over, particularly in the former Soviet Union. I mean, we had this huge problem that events that sort of shaped my upbringing, which are, I think, very different from yours. When I grew up, it was like you had Russia and the United States. That was this worldview, which fortunately has changed. But when the Soviet Union did collapse, we had an extraordinary amount of nuclear material that that is and was and is in the hands of extraordinarily unstable regions. So one of the things which Senator Obama has done is he has traveled with Senator Lugar, who is one of the really truly great foreign senators in terms of foreign policy. He's traveled with him to not just to track them, it's not just sort of hunting them down, like sort of grabbing suitcases, nuclear suitcases, but to make sure that we can track loose nukes and pass legislation to make sure we can track loose nukes. He traveled, I think is a great example, he traveled to the African continent and took a tour, and he went to a public square. He and his wife took an AIDS test in a public square. Why? We know in so many African nations that AIDS is ravaging the population. What better example can you set than to stand in the middle of the public square and say to the world and to the community, we are going to take an AIDS test? Because knowledge is power. You know what that result is, you know what to do with it. That's the kind of leadership which he is engaged in. That's concrete examples of what he's done. Remember also, this is somebody who has grown up in various parts of the United States and the world, so that he has an experience which I think brings him a world perspective. A Kenyan father. He lived in Indonesia when his mother was married to an Indonesian. He's lived in a life that I think is befitting to somebody who has a perspective that would, I think, really be very beneficial to us. in this country. So I guess those are a couple of concrete examples about his work as a senator plus his own personal background that I think would bring a great deal of support to his role as the leader of our country around the world.
Hi. I have a question about, we've all been through this process called college admissions, and we have to submit, a lot of things about ourselves. And one of the questions that we have to ask ourselves is, how do you distinguish yourself from so many other applicants who are saying the right things or have the right qualifications? So you've said a lot of things that I think resonate with students, and that's really exciting. But do you have something to share with us that is, how are you going to define yourselves from so many candidates over the years who say the right thing and say what we want to hear?
I think that I don't want you to take it on the words. I want you to take it on the deeds. And what we know is that we have always, from the very beginning of this campaign, we have talked about change. You talked about change. He's paying attention to the Obama talking points. But from the first day, we talked about change. Every day we have talked about change. That is who Barack Obama is. That is who we are as a campaign. The reality is all the other candidates went through various slogans and various mantras. Ours has never varied from change. So with that said, ask yourself, what is it that we have done to be a different kind of campaign that does embody the change? And I submit that what we have done to bring people in demonstrates our commitment to the true change. I was talking before about some of the stories about some of the contributions we've received. I look at the new registrations. I look at the way in which we have had college students pouring out to support us. I look at so many things which we have done in this campaign where we see every day that people have turned out to reclaim their democracy. That is what we see in this campaign. We see the 1 million donors. We see the $3.01 contribution. We see 450 people on this campus alone getting registered. That is what I see every day from my perspective on the campaign. And I would say that you can look at everything we have done in the campaign. Policy work. Let me give you one more example. Policy work. I started out, I've done various things in the campaign. I started out before hitting the road here, doing all the policy work for the campaign. We talked about how to do this, and I always knew that we could sit in a room in Washington and get 10 so-called experts, real smarty pants professors and folks like that, right? To sit in a room and say, well, how do we come up with a good energy policy? How do we come up with a good healthcare policy? We don't need more than 10 people to come up with some good ideas, gather them together, and write it out. You don't need more than that to come up with some good ideas. But that's not sufficient. So what we did is we formed policy networks, policy teams. We have over 1,600 policy experts around the country who are engaged in dozens of policy groups with the campaign, who are providing their input. Why? Because that is the way they want to make contributions. We have not left this to the so-called Washington experts. We have left this to people all over the country who want to contribute their policy ideas to what we do. So every day, everything we do, we live this creed of change. We believe this is only going to happen by virtue of everybody's involvement in the campaign. Everybody taking ownership in the campaign. Ultimately, everybody taking ownership in their democracy and everybody taking ownership in the government. So I would say, look at what we have done and know that from the first day until today and going forward, we are always talking about one thing, and we're talking about that change we all can believe in. We're talking about the hope that we're going to have that the future will be different, and our actions entirely follow our words. I'm very proud of that.
In the back here. My question is one I don't think you get asked very often because it's about a topic that's most people probably think is pretty boring, but I think it's important, so I'll ask it. It's about infrastructure and how terrible our country's is in comparison to many other countries in the world. By which I don't mean just like roads or highways or railroads or anything like that, but technology infrastructure like high-speed internet availability and wireless networks. So I was wondering, speaking of great ideas, if Barack Obama had any plans or made any commitments to bring us up to where we should be in those terms.
Yeah, I think infrastructure. You're very right. I think we have a deficit in our nation's infrastructure, and it does it crosses several places. One of the terrible examples where we saw was what happened with Hurricane Katrina. That was an infrastructure issue, right? The failure, the inability for the water to be contained. That was an infrastructure issue. We saw in Minnesota recently the bridge collapse. A terrible example of our infrastructure shortcomings. But I think also you point out an important thing, that the infrastructure, we cannot talk in the 21st century about infrastructure being all about bricks and mortar. It's got to be about wires and wirelessness, actually. And so one thing which we actually are committed to in particular is making sure that we continue to expand the technological infrastructure in the country. And particularly what we know is that one of the things that unites both the innermost cities and the outermost rural areas is the lack of access to technology. And you got pretty good internet access if you live in suburbia. And the reality is that leaves a lot of people out in the cold. And so actually we have a commitment to focusing particularly on increasing to make sure that everybody has access to technology through, again, improving particularly to cities and to the more rural areas that don't have it, because we have an inequality in this country. And the problem is that we have the inequality, which we will address by making sure there's greater access, and that inequality then has ramifications going forward, right? The student who can't access the internet because it's not, there's no wires have been run out where they are, because there's no other availability. That student is not able to learn as much as the student who does have it. And the hospital that does not have the same kind of access or the ease of access cannot treat its patients as well. So the ramifications are huge, and there's a particular commitment, again, to the areas that are underserved, and our nation really needs to take steps there. So we'll absolutely commit ourselves to that. Okay. One more question from the other room, right here.
Hi, Doctor. About a month or two ago, a report came out saying that Senator Obama, along with Senator Clinton, were among the most liberal senators in the Senate. And I know that Senator Obama makes a lot of his ability to sort of bring people together. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering, specifically with regards to such issues as, say, universal health care, mm-hmm. where you don't hear any of the Republican candidates even mentioning that or entertaining it, how is he going to bring people with such different ideologies together on issues like that?
Sure. It is a thing I find remarkable about my boss. He has a great ability to find ways to make people understand our common greatness and our common goals. Because we have spent so much time in the divisive Washington politics that Republicans like to sit over there, and the Democrats like to sit over there, and they all say, one person stands up to say something that's good, and the people on the other side are going to say, no, it's bad. They stand up and say something that's good, and they say, oh, no, it's bad. We are living in an extraordinarily divisive time of politics. And what we know is that, what has happened is that Barack Obama has found ways to reach across the aisles throughout this campaign, but also previously. In his time in the Illinois legislature, for example, he reached across the aisles to make sure we could have health insurance expanded for the children of the state of Illinois. So using that example that you brought up specifically, he achieved a result of increasing health care for the children of the state of Illinois by reaching across party lines. Absolute, tangible results of change. Why? Because Republicans and Democrats, independents, liberals, conservatives, they know that our children deserve to have access to quality, affordable health care. Our children aren't born saying, I don't know if I want to have a copay. Oh, I'm not sure what the deductible should be. Right? Our children are born with needs. They need to be immunized. They need to get doctor visits. You know, they need to have that kind of medical care, right, in terms of the healthcare world. There's absolute needs. These aren't choices that little children make. So what Barack Obama did is he said, we collectively in this state need to do something to help our children. We need to expand the number of children who can get the health care that they need. Republicans said, you know what, you're right. And together, they increased health care legislation. I was speaking to this young woman before about his work with Senator Lugar. Truly a great senator. Republican. He and Barack Obama have traveled together to take on the issue of loose nukes. How did that happen? Because they together said this is a need of our country, and this is a need of our world. We can't have loose nukes all over the world. And that's just, you know, suitcase nukes and things like that, you know. We need to make sure that we are protecting our future collectively in the world. How did he do that? He spoke with Senator Lugar. Senator Lugar said, you know what? We should do something about it together. He has made a concentrated effort everywhere he has been to reach across divides, to speak to our ultimate hopes, to speak to our ultimate goodness, no, our ultimate greatness, and ask the question about what we want, what we need, and not being stopped when people say, oh, I don't know. I don't want this because you're from the other side. I don't want this because you're not from this place, or you're not from that place. The question is, what can we do together? Right? Everybody who says we can't, our response is, yes, we can. You may have heard it on the campaign from time to time, but it is what we are all about. So we're never going to stop. And Barack Obama will not stop when people say we can't. Because we always do say, yes, we can. Because indeed, I know we can. I know we can achieve a more perfect union in this country. I know that if we appeal to the hopes of this country instead of our fears, if we appeal to the goodness in everybody, then these things can happen. And I know that my boss, Barack Obama, is committed to making that happen. And I'm absolutely certain that is why he's going to be the greatest president we've ever had in this country. So with that, I thank you very much. Have a good night. Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Dr. Alexander, as a token of our appreciation, we present this to you. It's a frame plaque of
Great.
your so again,
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for coming.
Great. Thank you.
Is there a number I can see that or something? Or,
I don't have my card on me.
flip it over. Yeah, no Clinton.
That was great. You know what?